All right, I believe we are live. So good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. So today I'm going to talk about how to find your maintenance calories. And, I think there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of people are confused as to how to do that. So I'm going to start with how to find your maintenance calories, go over some strategies to do that, some ways that you can make it a little bit easier on yourself and get you some better data. And then after that is complete, I will go into the live Q&A and answer whatever questions you have, and we will take it from there. So starting with how to find maintenance calories. Let me bring my chat up too. Hold on a second. All right. So what a lot of people will do to find their maintenance calories is go to some sort of online calculator and plug in their data, and it'll spit out some numbers and they'll say, okay, this should be my maintenance calories. The issue that a lot of people find, and what I hear a lot is, well, it said that my maintenance calories was supposed to be, say, 2,000, and I've been eating 1,500 calories and I'm gaining weight, or I'm still maintaining my weight. Well, the issue with an online calculator is it doesn't take into account your dieting history, your genetics, and a lot of different factors that can come into play. It's just doing a math equation to spit out some numbers for you. It doesn't mean that you can't use them, and I'll touch on that in a minute here, but it's not going to give you the most accurate data because it can't know you personally. To me, what is a better strategy to help with finding your own maintenance calories for yourself is, instead of just using a calculator, if you haven't been tracking, then just take the next week. Don't change anything about your eating habits. Don't change anything about the way you're doing anything, but now you're going to track it. And you're going to take that next week, and then you're going to do an average for the week. So what you want to do is make sure you're being really open and honest and accurate with things and not changing how you eat. Because if you do that, then you're setting yourself up for not getting accurate information. And it's only natural. Like, a lot of people, it's just natural once you start tracking. If you haven't been tracking, you just want to clean things up, right? Like, you want to reduce your calories, you want to watch what you're eating and be a little bit more conscious. And that is one of the values of tracking in general, is it's an extra step of accountability. But you really want to avoid doing that in this instance, because it's not going to give you accurate data to go by if you do that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So you want to be as open and accurate as possible, and don't change anything up. So that means if, like, you would have not ate all day and then stopped at the drive-thru on the way home and ate, like, do that. If you would have ate a whole freaking bag of potato chips, do that. Whatever it is, don't change it. But now you're actually going to track it, and this is going to give you much better information. And then what you do is you'll get that information for a week. I mean, you want to do it at least a few days. I prefer a full week, or at least a couple days of the week and a couple days of the weekend, just so because we tend to usually probably eat a little bit more on the weekends. It's kind of natural. But preferably a whole week. And it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be totally accurate, but it's just to get you in the ballpark. And then you take an average of those calories for those 7 days, and that will give you a better idea. So what you can do is, let me share my screen here. Right here. So, and I'm going to bring this up to the front or top. Hold on a second. Okay. So what you can do is, so this spreadsheet has some formulas in it and everything to help. Let me show myself a little bit too. I'm sure you want to see me too, right? So this has some formulas in it. So if you plug in your macros, it'll automatically calculate your calories. Remember, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, 1 gram of carbs has 4 calories, 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. This is where we get our calories from. Now, there is technically a 4th macronutrient, and that is alcohol, which is 7 calories per gram. We don't track that specifically on this sheet, but you have to, if you were to do it that way, you want to convert those calories to carbs and fats, but that's going on a tangent we don't need to go on right now. But what you can do is come in here. So let's just say this day you had 150 grams of protein and 200 carbs and 70 grams of fat. And I often track fiber, but that's not going to change your calories, but we can plug it in just for funsies. And now let's say the next day you had 170 and 250 and 80 and 20, and we'll do a lower one, 140, 175, 65, 18. So as you can see, I think this is a little bit off here. Let me make this a little bit smaller. So over here, it's calculating the average for the week. So if you did 2030 plus 2400 plus 1845, divided that by 3 to be 2092. So even if you didn't want to do all your macros for the week, you could just literally just look at calories for the first week just to get a rough estimate of where things are at. So you can just come over here and just overwrite it and just say, okay, I had 2,000 calories this day and 2,400 calories this day and not 24,000, 2,400. And say 1850 and 23. It doesn't matter if it's all over the place like this. You just want to get an accurate representation of what a normal week looks like. And then we'll say 2,500. So you did that for a whole week. Your average for the week was 2257. All right. If you're maintaining your weight while you do this, then you know right around 2,200 calories or so is your rough maintenance calories. Is it perfect? Of course not. But at least gives you a general idea of what things look like. And not only is that going to help with finding your maintenance calories, but it's also going to have the added benefit of really showing you what your actual diet looks like. A lot of people are extremely surprised. Like if you've never been tracking and you feel like you might eat a certain way, people are astonished with what it actually looks like. And it teaches you a lot about what's in the food you eat. Some people do this and go, I can't believe how much I'm eating. Some people do this and go, holy crap, I can't believe how little I'm eating. Or like, I thought I really liked carbs, but I eat a lot of fat. That's a very common one. And it's a good teaching tool as well as helping you find your maintenance calories. And what I do recommend too after that is taking the next week before jumping into a deficit and reducing calories and stuff, take roughly that same amount of calories. So say you take around 2250, make that your target calories now for the week and give yourself some macro targets. I usually recommend around 1 gram per pound and maybe around 20 to 30% of your calories from fat and the rest of your calories from carbs. There's a lot of ways to do it, but that's one way. And now you take the next week, trying to eat roughly around that, and then just see what happens for that week. Are you maintaining your weight while you do that? Okay, now you know your rough maintenance calories. If you're gaining weight, you know that that's a little bit above your maintenance calories. If you're losing weight, you know it's below your maintenance calories, and it gives you a better accurate representation while also having the teaching tool that it gives you to do that. And the problem, like I said before, probably before anybody actually got on this actual stream, is it doesn't like the calculators you can use online, they can be so inaccurate. They can be highly inaccurate. And they also don't know, like, what's your diet history like? It's just giving you based on your height, your weight, and things like that. But if you have an aggressive history of dieting, that you can't factor that in, and it can't really know your activity levels too much. Like, let me just do this. Let's look up TDEE calculator. Let's go to the first one, tdecalculator.net. And let's just plug me in. So I haven't been tracking, but I know based on a lot of history that my maintenance is probably somewhere between 26 and 2,800, or somewhere around there. I'd probably guess 27, 2,800. And let's just see what it says for me. So I'm 42. I weigh about 180 pounds. I am 5'9". Activity. So here's what I mean about activity too. So it says sedentary, like an office job, which I have. This is what I do all day for my job. I sit in front of this computer, but it's also then just taking activity in terms of exercise. It's not saying, are you sedentary at your job? Are you active at your job? And then also exercising, because there's a big difference between someone who exercises 3 days a week and has a sedentary job versus someone who exercises 3 days a week but is on their feet all day. That's a big difference. And it's one of the most underrated parts of everything that we do is just how much activity you do on a daily basis just outside of exercise. It makes a bigger difference than your exercise does, actually, in terms of like total amount of calories. But regardless, let's just say, so I usually work out 4 days a week, so 3 to 5 days, and optional body fat, we'll just leave that blank. Calculate. So this one was actually pretty close. So it said around 2,600 calories. So egg on my face. But you just never know. Like, I've seen it where it can just completely it usually overshoots is what I noticed. Like, somebody may be maintaining on 2,000 calories, it'll tell them to eat 2,500 or something like that, or people say that a lot. So you can use something like this, and you can use these numbers, and what you can do with that is just track it and see how it goes. Like, no matter what you do, no matter how you calculate your maintenance calories, it's all about monitoring and see what happens, no matter what. Like, people have sometimes they don't want to start doing something because they don't know if it's going to be right or wrong or whatever else. And the thing is, like, you're just never going to know for sure until you get into it and do it. So if you eat 2,600 calories and you're maintaining your weight, okay, now you know. If you do that and you're use some sort of calculator that says eat this much to lose weight and you're not losing, well, now you know it's too high and you need to adjust. It's just giving you a general starting point. So there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I find a lot of value in taking the eating in the same kind of like a diet recall for a week and then just using that to move forward. So hopefully that was helpful. Let's get into some Q&A. If you're not following me on Instagram, do so. Colin DeWaay. Been posting a lot more lately. I was a little bit slacky this week, but we'll get back into it. All right, let's see what we got. I haven't even really looked at comments. Good morning, Jake, Priscilla, Elise, Space Boy. That's awesome. Love it. You can drink. You can absolutely drink in moderation. You just want to account for the calories. And I don't have everybody use that tool in terms of like using the automatic calculation. I like to do that as at least a teaching tool sometimes, just because it can your actual calories in a tracking app can vary significantly from the calories that you would get from actually adding up your macros. And this is because of things like rounding on nutrition labels, things like fiber and sugar alcohols, which they use like net carbs. You probably see that sometimes. And it's kind of like a loophole because they claim that you don't get calories from it because your body doesn't digest it entirely, and you just basically excrete it out. But that's not entirely true. A lot of fiber, you actually convert them to short chain fatty acids, and you actually get calories from it. You don't get the full 4 calories, but you probably get around 2.5 or 3. So I like to claim all carbs and use that. So if you eat a lot of net carbs, that'll show a big difference in your total calories between doing the calculation and the tracking app that you use. But it's just one way to do it. It really depends on the individual, and something's in the way of this, isn't it? What's that? Sorry. So I lost my train of thought with that. So yeah, I mean that's a certainly a strategy you can take. But if the calculations drive you nuts, then just look at calories. It's going to be close enough. I'm a little high. Here we go. All right, where are we at? Q&A. I keep saying I'm going to do it and then I don't. So I'm eating 1540 and lose 0.2 kilograms per day. What should I increase to gain a little weight and fat to gain little weight and fat as possible? I'm searching for maintenance. So, well, first of all, you don't want to look at it on a per day basis just because your weight can fluctuate so much on a daily basis, and it's not body fat related. It's almost all water weight. So what you want to do is, much like I showed, let me bring that sheet back up, show you what I'm talking about. So much like I have the calorie calculations over here that equates automatically, I do the same thing with weight, and we take an average for the week, but we don't look at the daily. So if you take a look at this first week, let's just say you're in kilograms, so we'll do kilograms. So let's just say you weigh, this is just random, I don't know how much you weigh. Let's say you weigh around 70 kilograms, and then the next day you're 70.5 and 69.6 and 70.2 and 71 and 69.5. I mean, it can really jump around like this. It's not abnormal, especially if you eat a lot of different foods on any given day. And 70.3, we'll say. So instead of looking at all this right here, you just want to look at this number for the week, and then you compare that each week, so that if you see, okay, this week you were 70.16 and the next week you were say 69.5, you lost about 0.6 kilograms, which for those of us in the US, that's about what, 1.2, 1.3 pounds or so, something like that. Probably a decent loss for most people, especially if you're around 160 calories or 160 pounds. That would be a decent loss. But if you look on a daily basis, you can see it going up and down and all around, or you can see it steadily making big drops for a few days, but then it might jump right back up. You just don't really know. So your weight fluctuates on a daily basis for things like hormones, stress, sleep, sodium intake, inflammation from your exercise, like how much food is still digesting when you wake up, how many fluids you drank, on and on. There's so many different reasons. So you don't want to get tied up in how much you're losing per day. And even then, if you're just starting a diet, you might see a significant drop that first week. not always. I mean, some people actually gain on the first week just because their digestion, start eating a lot more hard to digest foods, sore from extra activity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of people will also see a big drop that first week, maybe even 2 weeks, and then it'll start slowing down from there. So you want to give it a little bit of time, unless it's like an extreme amount. But if you're over the 1% just in 1 week, I wouldn't be too concerned about it, and just kind of see how things go, because especially if you drop your carbs quite a bit, you start losing glycogen storage and water weight from that. And that's the majority of the initial weight loss you see is typically through water weight, especially people who go on very low carb diets after eating a lot of carbs. That makes a big difference. So now if you were to lose 0.2 per day and it ended up being a 1.4 kilogram drop for the week, which is around a little over 3 pounds, then okay, that's kind of a lot. But I would still, if it's been consistently like that, then I would add in some. And if you take the 500 calories per pound rule, which is, it's not exact, but it's, decent. So 3,500 calories is a pound of fat, which is roughly half a kilogram, not quite. And you can do that equation. So if you wanted to add an extra pound or a half a kilogram to your or how do I want to word that? If you want like a pound less per week, then you could increase around 500 calories. But that I wouldn't usually recommend that much, just because the body is very unique, and it's just not a math equation. And that's why I get really cautious about saying things like, well, just like doing the math, because it doesn't always work out that way. So if you think you're losing too fast, I would add in maybe a couple hundred calories. Or if you're not doing a refeed, I would add a double refeed, consecutive day refeeds on top of your normal, to give you the benefits of the double refeed for hormones and metabolism potentially, as well as to get to enjoy some more food. And then that might bring your pace down a little bit too, while giving you more calories, but also getting that added benefit of the double refeed, which is kind of what I would recommend personally. But yeah, just keep going. And remember, your maintenance calories is a moving target too. So it changes. If you lose weight, your maintenance calories are going to come down. Like, it's just how it works. So I hope that was helpful. It's a very helpful tool. Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily have to do it forever, but until you have learned more about what's in the food you eat, it's just it's irreplaceable in terms of like you will learn. I mean this 100%. Like, I really wholeheartedly mean this. You will learn more from a month of tracking macros and taking the time to try to hit them and really making it a priority than you will reading any textbook or any scientific literature out there. You'll like 100% for sure. All right. I have till December to reverse. What would the ideal increments be? I was thinking 100 a month or 50 every 2 weeks. It really depends on a few things. So one is what's most important to you. So keep in mind, the faster you increase calories, the more likely you are to gain weight, but the longer it takes for you to see the benefits of that reverse, like improved performance, metabolism, enjoying more food and flexibility and feeling better and all that type of stuff. But on the flip side, the slower you increase, the less likely you are to gain, but the longer it's going to take to see those improvements. And I can't tell you what's most important to you. And then the other thing is, I don't like just saying, well, make static adjustments each week or each month or whatever else. I'm a much bigger fan of monitoring things, kind of like I was just showing you about monitoring your weight. So checking that. So be consistent with things, monitor your weight, take the weekly average. If you're losing weight, you can add a little bit more calories. If you're maintaining, you can be a little bit more moderate. If you're gaining, especially a little bit too much, than you're comfortable with, then you just hold steady until things slow down, and then you can make the bumps from there. Whereas if you just make static, like every single week or 2 weeks, I'm going to increase 50 or 100 calories, that may work just fine, but it may be way too much or way too little. And I don't like just forcing it into a certain static number. And I've heard that from a lot of people. They said, well, I just increased 100 calories every single week for several weeks, and I was gaining weight like crazy. And it's like, well, if you're gaining weight really fast, then stop making 100 calorie increases. Your body's already having a hard time keeping up. So if you just keep adding on top of that, it's just going to be a struggle. So, but I find that somewhere between 40 and 60 calories per week, as long as you're not gaining too quickly, is a decent spot. And it just depends on so much. Well, I'm going to try to do them every other week here for a while. And if they continue to do really well and I can keep showing up and doing it, I mean, maybe I'll go every week or most weeks. I actually tried to get, I bought all this new equipment and stuff to be able to use my nice camera to get better quality, because I really do want to make these like a normal part of what we do. And unfortunately, I'm having issues. Actually, if there's any tech people out there or people that know stuff, let me show you something. I won't spend more than a minute or two on this, I promise, and then we'll come back to the Q&A. But my nice camera, that Sony a6400, I'm going to switch to it right now. So you can see the quality is way better. Let me raise myself up a little bit. But what's happening is, watch as I move around and what happens. Like, you see the colors and the blurriness. I don't know what's going on there. And I spent an hour with the StreamYard people trying to get it figured out, and they couldn't get it figured out. And, they think it has to do with the frame rate, because they can only do 30 FPS. This is on 60. The only other option I have is 24. But when I go to 24, it doesn't show the signal at all. And I can't get it to work, which is very frustrating, especially all the money I spent on all this equipment to do this for you guys. So, I mean, as long as I don't move around too much, it's fine. But if I start moving around like this, it just looks horrible, and I don't like that. So I'm going to try to get that figured out. Maybe I have to go to OBS and figure it out that way. But if anyone knows what could be going on, please let me know, or shoot me a message on Instagram, or email me at Colin at ColinDeWaayTraining.com or coach at ColinDeWaayTraining.com, either one. I would really appreciate it, because I want to be able to use this camera, but I can't deal with this. It looks horrible. But I also wanted to tell you that just because I want to show and prove that I am taking this seriously. I really like these, even though I lose subscribers for some reason, like a handful of subscribers every time I do one. I enjoy it, and I know that a lot of you do too. So let's keep going. Let me switch back to my other camera. Where I'm going here. So this is just my normal webcam, which is a nice webcam. It is, but webcams just don't give you the same quality. All right, back to the show. Does intermittent fasting slow down your metabolism if followed it for a long period? No, unless, well, here's the thing. Intermittent fasting versus eating the same amount spread out throughout the day in a longer eating period makes literally zero difference. Not only for metabolism, but fat loss too. Like, it makes zero difference. And this has been studied plenty. The benefit of intermittent fasting for most people is that it makes it easier for them to stick to lower calories in a shortened eating period. So if you're only eating for 8 hours a day versus 12 or 14 hours a day, a lot of people find it easier to be able to reduce their calories that way. And for people who don't really track it, it almost it just forces them to. Like, they may still eat kind of the same as they usually do, but by taking away a meal or two, you therefore eat less calories and see better results. But the fasting itself doesn't really give you better results, and it doesn't change your metabolism differently than eating in a longer eating window of time either. So, I mean, when you go into a calorie deficit, your metabolism is going to slow down. It's just how it works. Just like when you go into a calorie surplus, your metabolism speeds up. Your body adapts to whatever you do. So intermittent fasting can be a good tool in a fat loss period, especially if it helps you stick to low calories. Like, I don't intentionally intermittent fast, but I kind of do anyways, just because I don't eat breakfast. And, I've never been hungry in the morning, so I don't eat breakfast. So I don't do it because it's intermittent fasting. It's just how I eat. But what I find for a lot of people who do intermittent fasting, once they're finally done with their fat loss phase and they go into a reverse diet phase, at first it's still great, especially in the early stages when actually you're usually more hungry in the reverse than you are in your cut. But over time, as hunger hormones start to settle and you get to a better place hormonally and metabolically and everything, it can be difficult to get all your calories in when you're still intermittent fasting, because now you're trying to eat a lot more calories and your hunger hormones are stable versus all jacked up, and you're just not as hungry. So now you feel like you're force feeding yourself, and you almost at that point have to broaden your eating window out to be able to get all your calories in. You don't have to, again, no matter how you want to do it, whatever works best for you and you like and enjoy, it's fine. But no, just the fasting itself has no impact on your metabolism. It's how much you're eating that does. Can you lose any amount of muscle in a 24-hour fast? No, you won't lose muscle in just 24 hours of a fast. I haven't actually started it yet. We're going to start probably the middle to end of next month. So we don't have an exact date set yet, but especially as it gets cooler here in Florida, a little bit cooler, so easier to go on walks without melting, and get through Labor Day and my wife's birthday and stuff, and then we'll start the cut at that point. So I'm getting really excited for it. I haven't done a legit cut in a long time. Like I cut for like 8 weeks or so at the end of last year and was planning on doing a bigger cut. But then when I had all the eye stuff and I couldn't exercise for, 22 weeks in the grand scheme of things, like I just put a pause on the cut. So my show that I did was almost 2 years ago. So I've only cut for 8 weeks out of like 2 years. So in theory, metabolically, I should be in a great place. And it'll be exciting to see some changes in body comp. All right. If you track food for 2 weeks to determine maintenance as described when you opened this session, but your weight went up because of water, stress, sodium, will this skew what your maintenance calories are? Well, if you're doing the average for the week, then it shouldn't really make an impact, because these things aren't going to be every single day. They would just be occasionally, unless you're just pounding extra sodium all the time. And then in that case, that's probably going to be the norm, right? Yes, things like stress and stuff can impact cortisol, and it can make a bit of a difference, but I wouldn't get too caught up in that type of stuff. And regardless, like I said too, the biggest thing is that you be consistent with whatever strategy you take moving forward, and that's gonna show you if you're in a deficit or not. So don't get too caught up in trying to find the perfect calories for your starting point, because you just never know. Like, we can make all the best educated guesses that we want and until we're blue in the face, but you don't know how the body's going to respond until you get into it. So I always encourage people, like, don't get too caught up in trying to like figure everything out and do get all your ducks in a row ahead of time, because you can create the most perfect plan, but there's no guarantees that that's going to work. And everyone seems to have a certain threshold of calories they typically need to get to as well, just to see results. So we can do math equations to start and everything. You can drop your calories by 25% or whatever, but you may not respond, and you might need to get a little bit more aggressive. And then all of a sudden, you drop another 100 calories and boom, the body starts moving. So you don't want to like panic or get freaked out if things don't respond right away. Unless, of course, you're in a bad spot metabolically and you needed to reverse anyways, and you need to be cautious of that at all times anyway. All right, let's trying to reverse diet. I was dieting for, let's say, 5 years. I was eating 1,000 to 1,200. I'm trying to average between 1,600 to 1,800. At first I gained, now I'm starting to level out. How long should I eat at this calorie level before I increase? Well, it sounds like you probably made a really big jump right off the bat, which is why you were probably gaining a bit faster. 400 to 600 increase almost immediately is quite large. So at this point, if you're trying to continue with it, then I would go with the normal approach of, okay, take the average for the week. If you're not gaining, then make a small bump, even if it's only 20 or 30 calories. Like that's kind of one of the ways, like, even if you get to a place where you're happy with your calories, sometimes I'd like to make those little tiny adjustments like that, just because it's like the body's never going to notice it anyways. You're not even going to notice it. It's not like you're going to intentionally add like what would be 20 calories, like a couple of M&Ms or whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that serious, but it adds up over time. But yeah, if you do like a normal 40-ish calorie increase each week, if you're stable, that, keep going up with that. You don't want to stay at that for a long time and then make an increase and stay for a long time. You can, and you make sure your body gets good and adapted, but you don't want to make it take forever either. And again, it depends on your own goals and priorities. But check out here. Let me show my screen again. Let me minimize that, and let's go. What was that called? Fast to increase. Oh, increase. see what shows up. Here it is. Reverse dieting: how fast to increase your calories. And this will give you much more detail. Let me plug it into the comment. How fast to increase calories. Reverse dieting. That should be helpful. All right. Namaste. All right. Thank you so much. I'm glad that I've been able to help, and these positive comments always make my day. So thank you. Is the whoosh effect real? I lost 3 pounds overnight. Freaked me out. So first of all, with the whoosh effect, with the theory behind it, I think I talked about this in the last stream, but I'll definitely answer your question. Consider too, like, you might lose 3 pounds one night, but then you gain 3 pounds the next day. Like, maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe you had way less sodium than usual. Maybe you got a lot of extra sleep, recovered really well, ate most of your food earlier in the day, so there was nothing in your stomach when you digested. There could be a lot of reasons for it, right? And then you go back to normal and it comes right back again. That's very possible. If you see a big drop on the scale and then it just stays there, that can happen. Is it because of the whoosh effect? I don't think so. I used to believe in the whoosh effect. And if you don't know what the whoosh effect is, it's kind of a theory that says, sometimes you'll be kind of stuck and just plugging along, and then all of a sudden you see a big drop in the scale and it just stops. Like I said, it can go up and down a lot on a daily basis, but usually it just kind of averages out for the week, kind of similar. But if you see a big drop and then it just stays down there, then they call that, it was the whoosh effect, which is your fat cells released fat, release adipose tissue, and what happened is that empty space in your fat cell now got accompanied by water. Like, it filled up with water, so it still has something in that space, and then eventually that water releases, and then you see a big drop on the scale. I don't believe that to be true. At first, when I first heard that, I thought it was. I was like, okay, that just makes perfect sense. But the thing is, once I realized the same thing happens in a reverse as well, oftentimes it just doesn't make sense then, because sometimes you'll be steady, and then boom, you'll see a 2 pound increase on the scale, and it just stays there. It's like, well, what the hell? Where did that come from? And it's not like you just all of a sudden filled up with water, or it just doesn't make any sense going the opposite direction. It could make sense the other way, but not going up in weight. And it's always a good thing too to remember, like, if your reverse dieting things are going well and you see a big jump, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're just going to gain 2 pounds every single week moving forward. That might be now kind of your new normal kind of spot. Why does it happen? I can't say for certain. It just does. And I can just tell you that it's not abnormal if you see something like that happen in either direction. So you reverse diet until you gain weight, that's maintenance. Potentially. I mean, I'm not sure I know how to answer that. So, I mean, whenever you start a reverse diet, you don't know what's going to happen at first anyways. You might lose weight, you might gain weight, you might maintain for a while. Everybody's body responds differently. And of course, adherence is huge. Most of the time, I find when people gain much more than they're comfortable with, it's because their adherence went out the window. They thought, well, I'm going to gain weight anyway, so what's the point? And then it gets out of hand. But if you're trying to reverse diet just to kind of roughly maintain and just kind of live a healthy lifestyle, then you can take it a little bit slower and just get to a point where your calories are in a place that you're comfortable with, that you're happy with, that gives you balance, but is rough maintenance, and you can kind of hang around there. But remember, your weight maintenance is a moving target. So your maintenance calories isn't static ever. It changes. And that's why we reverse, is to try to get your maintenance calories back up to a better place, because it's suppressed from dieting. And that's the point of the reverse. But it's also to help minimize body fat while doing it, because if say you're at 1200 and you could theoretically get up to like 1800 or whatever, if you just go from 12 to 1800 right away, your body's gonna be like, whoa, okay, here comes the body fat, because you're going way above what your suppressed metabolism can handle. Whereas if you just take those small incremental steps over time, then it can keep up better. Does it keep you from gaining any weight at all? No. Maybe you never know for sure, but hopefully that helps. I'm not really sure. Where am I here? Yeah, Jake. So the problem is when I go to, and I can't do it, I can't show you because I'll lose the live stream. So it has 60 and 24. The StreamYard is in 30 FPS, but when I change it to 24 FPS through the HDMI, because I'm plugged in through the Cam Link, what do you call it? Whatever it's called, doesn't matter. When I change it to 24 through my HDMI settings, which I have to use, then it doesn't recognize my camera anymore. I can't even use it. And the lady that I was talking to was completely stumped, but I can't use 24. So I don't know what to do because I can't change it to 30, and 60 does that if it is the FPS. I can't use 24, so I'm kind of stumped. What I'm probably gonna do is try to hook it up through my laptop and see if the same thing happens, or maybe there's something going on with my computer. But I don't know. It's pretty frustrating. Spend a couple $100 for an annual subscription, and I might not even be able to use it. And I might have to figure out OBS or whatever. But that's a good idea. I could try taking the autofocus off. Also try lowering the camera frame rate as well as the autofocus. Thanks, man. So when you say camera frame rate, what do you mean by that? I think you're talking about the FPS. So yeah, we can't do that for some reason. I don't know why. It's very frustrating. What would you wish all coaches' clients would do to benefit most from your services? Be open and honest and continually check in no matter what is happening, and try as much as possible to separate your emotions from the result and just put that faith in me. And what I mean by that is for me to know how things are going and what kind of adjustments to make, I need to know what's happening. And if you're struggling to stick to the plan, it's kind of all over the place. I don't really know what to do. If you're executing the plan well and you're not getting results, that's fine. Now I know that, and I know what kind of adjustments to make. But what happens so frequently is people get so attached to that result and how things are going, and they see that they're not losing as well as they wanted to, or whatever it may be, and they can kind of change the plan because of that. They kind of stop following it, and they get frustrated by it, and they kind of fall off. Whereas it's just like, don't worry about the result, just focus on executing the plan and let me take that burden. Because when we get our emotions involved with the process, it's just a disaster. I think we can all agree on that, myself included. And there's a reason why most coaches have coaches too, because it's just so hard to be objective with yourself. And it's just, when your emotions get involved, it's just a really difficult thing to continue to follow through. So I say, let me figure out what everything means. Let me look at the pictures and the measurements and the weight and determine, are things working the way they should or not, and what kind of adjustments to make from there. Versus, and then you can just focus on just executing the plan and just doing what you need to do, and not worrying about all that other stuff. It takes a huge burden off of yourself. And then, like I said, checking in. Like, I've never had a client, I don't think, that didn't routinely check in that had any long-term success. And the thing that people struggle with is they feel like, well, I had a week where I didn't follow the plan, so there's nothing to check in, and I'm not going to send anything, and then I don't hear from them from a while, and they feel like, well, either they don't want to feel like they're disappointing me, or they feel like, well, I should be able to get it together by myself, and I want to get back on plan before I check in. And it just turns into this thing where it just goes down this spiral that they can't get themselves out of, and gets worse and worse and worse. And I always tell them, like, when it comes to check-ins, you almost don't even need me if things are going well. Like, if things are going really, really well, you already know I'm like, things are going great. Well done. Great job. Let's keep going. Right. Like, it's pretty simple stuff when things are going really well. It's fun to celebrate the wins and encourage and stuff. But when you really need the help is when things are a struggle, when things aren't going well, and you feel like it's not worth the effort, or you're mentally struggling, or life is stressing you out and you're having a hard time with balance, or whatever it may be. That's when you really need the help more. And I always say, like, just check in. Like, I don't care if it's just, I I'm really struggling right now. I didn't do anything. I'm not sure what to do. Like just check in so we can talk. And sometimes just talking about it and getting it out there is the very thing that helps get you past the struggle. Whereas if you try to keep it to yourself, it just festers and festers and gets worse. It's like you got to get that poison out and just get it out there. Like I'm never going to berate or belittle or come down on people because they didn't follow the plan. I'm not going to be disappointed. The only time I'm ever disappointed is if somebody just gives up altogether. But we have to have that open, honest communication, because if I don't know what's going on, it's almost impossible for me to help. So I always encourage like as much honest, open communication as possible. It's just critical between both of us. Good question. If you misunderstood my question, basically I want to know what mistakes clients make. Oh, I should have read that first. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that would probably still, that would probably be at the top of the list. Not checking in because you're struggling. Like check in, always check in, always check in, always check in, always. Been doing a form of intermittent fasting for 2 years and it's not magic whatsoever, but I personally like eating 2 or 3 bigger meals. I feel fuller. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I find not only do I like bigger meals, but I find that my digestion does much better with bigger meals that are spaced out more versus lots of smaller feedings. And there's actually some evidence to suggest that this could be a thing too, even though when you if you Google like bad digestion and how to help with it, almost all of them say eat smaller, more frequent windows, so your stomach, your digestive system doesn't have to process as much. But there's something in the digestive system called the migrating motor complex, which is basically a system, a process in the body that kind of like after you eat, I think it's like within 90 to 120 minutes, what it does is it starts kind of sweeping away all the like bad bacteria and undigested particles and all the let's just call it crap that's still sitting in there, and it kind of sweeps it away and cleans things up. And it takes a while. It takes a couple hours or so, I think. Don't take this like as the set like number, but something like that. And it takes time for that process to complete. But if you eat before that process has time to complete its cycle, then it stops and it doesn't do it. And that stuff still sits there. So if you're eating all the time, it can never go through that process. And what ends up happening is you can have a bunch of bad bacteria still sitting in there. And that bacteria starts eating on the fiber and everything else that you give to it. And it can just really cause a lot of digestive stress. Of course, everyone's unique. I'm not saying that you should always wait a long time to eat, but there could be some evidence as to like, at least maybe that's why I do better with it. I don't really know, but I just find that kind of fascinating. Yeah. We typically do our cuts in the colder months because I just love just picking up a lot of walking when it's time to cut, and we like to take our dog out for walks too, and going for half-hour to hour-long walks when it's 90 degrees and humid and you know the pavement's hot for the dogs, so you can't even do it. It's like it's just not fun. Can a 5'2" female that maintains on 1,600 calories reverse up to 3,000 calories, or is that too much? It's probably too much, but every person's unique. Like, I mean, you can always reverse to any calorie you want. It's just you're probably going to gain a lot of weight doing it. One misconception about reverse dieting is that if you just keep increasing calories, that you can just keep increasing your maintenance calories to basically whatever you want. But it's not that's not how it works. How it works is it gets your metabolism to what it should be genetically speaking if your metabolism wasn't suppressed from the dieting. So if your normal maintenance calories would be 2,000, that doesn't mean that you can reverse diet and not gain weight up to 3,000 just because you're taking it slow. No, I mean, you're at a certain point, you're going to start gaining. Like you may do really well and everyone's different and it may go for quite a while, but there will be a certain point where the body's just like, nope, that's too much. And we're going to start gaining relatively quickly. And it can be a small adjustment sometimes. 50 to 100 calories can make all the difference in the world towards that tail end. And so you'll eventually find a spot where your body probably can't keep up and need to back it up a little bit just to find maintenance if you're trying to. But Yeah, I mean, don't get too caught up in targets and trying to get to certain numbers. That's another mistake a lot of people make too, is they say like, I should be able to get to X calories, probably again by looking at some kind of calculator online that says that should be their maintenance calories. So they try to force it there, but their genetic maintenance calories or their own personal metabolism and hormones and everything else doesn't really allow for that. And by trying to force it, it just makes it a miserable process, and you gain way more than you should. And then you got to try to take that off down the road. So it's a balancing act. Possibly. I mean, you just don't. There's too much I don't know. Trying to help my older brother become healthy. He is currently 313 pounds, and I tried setting him on a 3,000 calorie diet to begin with at 300 grams of protein, 500 carbs, and 100 fat. Is that fair? Probably going to be too much, and especially that's way too much protein for someone who's overweight like that. You want to set their, instead of a 1 gram per pound, do like a 1 gram per pound of like a goal weight, or you know what I mean, or maybe around 200 grams, or I mean, if you really like protein, you can do more, but it's unnecessary to go that high. It's very helpful to have high protein, but that's probably going to be pretty unrealistic for him to try to stick to. And that's an awful lot of carbs and fat. And I would do like I talked about in the beginning of this video, and try to find a rough maintenance calories, try to see what his normal diet looks like, and take it from there. But at a certain point, even though he's heavier and in theory 3,000 calories would probably be a deficit, I just find that that's not often the case. And if you go too slow with somebody that has a lot of weight to lose, it can be very unmotivating and make it more likely for them to not follow through, because it just feels like it's going to take forever. So it's also a balancing act between getting them good, reasonable results, but not dropping them so low that they're going to get stuck after their body adapts for the first time. And that's probably way too much. I've been cutting for 20 weeks. 6 of them were diet breaks. It usually takes me a week to get back to pre-diet break weight. It will then start moving again for 2 weeks. Is it normal? You're probably setting your diet break numbers too high. Everyone's a little bit different. I find that, I mean, some people tend to gain a bit more, and oftentimes it can just be extra glycogen and water that you're replenishing by getting your carbs back up. But if it's taking you a long time to get that weight back down again, you might be going into a bit of a surplus and then back into a deficit again. So you may want to reduce your diet break numbers a little bit. I find most people kind of roughly maintain. Some people even lose or just gain a little bit, like less than a pound. But if you're finding that you're gaining a bit too much, then think about backing off your calories. Well, I mean, one thing to consider: 5 steps forward and 2 steps back still keeps you going in the right direction, right? Like, you in the grand scheme of things, you're still going to get further and further ahead. But yeah, I understand what you mean. And you also have to weigh that, okay, if you're keeping your metabolism in a better spot, it might work better for the long run. I would start with backing off. It's irrelevant, like what somebody else eats and how much they weigh and what height they are. Like, people are completely different. That goes back to what I talked about in the beginning of the video about finding your maintenance calories, because it's so unique. We can plug in TDEL calculators and stuff like that, but it's going to be so different. Like, I've seen people who are almost identical, like height, weight, age, and everything. And one person will get their calories up to like 1,700 or so, and that's all they can take. The other person will get up to 2,500 calories and still be going up. You know what I mean? Genetics matter, activity levels matter. All the dieting history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we definitely don't want to compare to what anybody else can or cannot do. It's irrelevant to you, and that's just important in general. There's so much getting thrown at us all the time, and social media and everything else, and it can be hard not to compare. But it brings no value at all. It only is going to make things worse. The only thing you have control over is what you do based on how things are going for you, or all of us. Again, I can't. I can't say. It just depends on so much, and then I don't know enough about you, and your height is meaningless to me. I mean, not meaningless, but it doesn't mean enough to be able to give you numbers. When it comes to calorie balance, if you're reversing and at, say, on average 1,300 per day and losing 1 pound a week, would that, with that, I'm assuming I could increase by 3,000, 3,500 per week to maintain, or does it not work like that? Oh, I see what you're saying. So if you bumped it up by 500, like in theory, you would think that would work, but probably not. Especially coming from a low calorie diet deficit, I would make bigger increases. I would maybe bump them up like 100 calories a week for a while and see how things go. And if you continue to lose, you can even get a little bit more aggressive, but I wouldn't go all the way to the mathematical 500 by any stretch. Just, and again, it kind of comes down to your own unique balance and what's most important to you. But it's pretty rare I ever increase somebody's calories in a reverse more than 100, unless they're just like, I'm struggling. I'm really having a hard time here. I can't adhere to the plan. It just seems unrealistic. Then we'll make bigger jumps, or if they just want bigger jumps, then that's fine. But it's kind of nice too. Like if you're reverse dieting while losing weight, it's kind of like you're getting the best of both worlds. And I see that sometimes where somebody's losing really well every single week while we increase calories, and I'll make a bigger bump, and they'll say, hey, can we keep the smaller increases, like, because I feel good and everything? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. So instead of making a bigger increase, we keep the smaller increases. They keep losing weight. They keep bringing their calories up. They feel good. They're just loving life. Like, what's better than increasing calories while losing weight? You know what I mean? So there can be some value in that too. And then also once you do eventually start gaining some weight, which will happen eventually, since you've lost weight in the earlier part, now as you start gaining, it kind of brings you more back to where you already were happy with to begin with. You know what I mean? It kind of like creates a little bit of wiggle room. Do net calories matter more when maintaining weight? Like, can I eat back what I burned? If, for example, I run and burn 995 calories, can I eat those back? Do not eat back calories ever. It just doesn't. First of all, we don't know how many calories we burn from any exercise we do. And most calculators and measurements and heart rate monitors and the watches and everything else, they're usually highly inaccurate. And there's actually been published studies that show that they can be up to like literally like 80% off, like 80% off. So you don't want to look at calories burned from that. And then if you eat that back too, it just doesn't make any sense. You're much better off just being consistent with your kind of rough activity levels and your nutrition, and then adjusting accordingly based on that. But I don't recommend eating back calories, and your net calories is 100% what matters, but your net calories is the calories in, and then the calories out from exercise, the calories out from your BMR, the calories out from the thermic effect of food, the calories out from your normal daily activity levels. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So you're never going to know what that is, but you do know when you be consistent and see what happens with your weight through that process. So that's why I don't look at like calories burned, so to speak. I never do. I think NEAT would increase too, and then you could, in theory, increase by 500, but wasn't too sure. Yeah, I think that a lot of times when people do lose weight in reverse, oftentimes I think that's part of it. So if you've been dieting for a long time, your hormones are all jacked up, your metabolism's slow, you're probably really tired, just not recovering very well. The body is not in a great spot when you've been dieting. Like, it's just not happy. So now you start bringing calories up. Now you start recovering better. You start sleeping better. You start feeling more active, like you said. So you may not even realize it, but you start moving around more. Whereas before you were super tired and just kind of laying around all day because you're so exhausted. But now those activity levels start coming up. You start recovering better and all that type of stuff. And it can kind of just catapult forward, and your metabolism starts increasing with the increased calories and stuff too. Like that initial part of the reverse, when you can stay consistent with things, it can be kind of like a magic window where some really fun things can happen if you stay diligent to the plan, which is why I always recommend kind of looking at it as like an extension of your cut, because this is where you're going to get yourself to a point where you can get your calories high and keep your weight down, because now we can keep increasing every single week and you're keeping steady. Whereas if you're gaining really fast because you're not adhering to the plan, now we are going to be having a harder time to increase calories because we were trying to keep that weight down. And it's like you just keep stuck in this cycle of getting nowhere. So if you really do want to be able to eat a lot of food and keep your weight gain to a minimum, follow that plan diligently, at least in the early stages of the reverse, which is hard because you are super hungry at that point, and your body is signaling to you and doing everything it can to try to get you to eat. It's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's a normal physiological response, but you have to be aware of that and kind of like fight back, so to speak. Always welcome, my man. Which, by the way, I haven't done my little spiel yet. If you are interested in online coaching, head to ColinDeWaayTraining.com and fill out this application that's here. Ask you some things that I need to know. And what it'll do is it'll shoot me an email and it'll tell me everything that I need to know to get a better understanding of where you're at. And what I do is I shoot a video just like this, and I'll talk about it, I'll point to it, and I'll give you all my thoughts and everything you need to know, and I'll email you back. And what you need to make sure that if you don't see a response from me within 24 hours, check your junk mail. They go there all the time, probably because I send you a link. So make sure you check that if you don't hear back from me, and we'll take it from there. So if anybody has any questions on the coaching, just let me know. All right, what else we got? If I plan on having a diet break and also not lift for the week vacation, how would you suggest me to adjust my diet break calories? I usually eat 1,500 on a diet break or on diet weeks, and 1,800 on diet breaks with workouts. I would probably keep it the same, just because if for no other reason you're going on vacation and you need to enjoy your vacation. I shouldn't say need to, but I'm someone who is like, life is all about experiences and memories. And I always think about like what you're going to regret more later in life. Are you going to regret enjoying your vacation more and feeling like you got to experience it better and have fun and maybe gain a pound or two? Or you're going to regret like not gaining any weight or even losing weight, but not experiencing the trip the way you wanted to? Like 5 years from now, you're not going to care what you weighed at the end of August in 2021. You know what I mean? So I always encourage people, if possible, don't even track, like just go enjoy. Just don't fall into, well, because I'm off plan, then I need to completely binge my face off until I'm uncomfortable and feel sick and then eat some more. That's where you can really get into trouble. But if you just don't restrict too much, but don't go nuts, you'll be fine. Typically, we're more active on vacation, so we move around more and we burn more calories that way. But also, you could just bump up your calories a little bit more to have a little bit of flexibility. So maybe do like 2,000 calories. Don't really look at macros and just kind of give yourself some flexibility that way. There's no right or wrong answers. There's positives and negatives to whatever you do. You just have to be comfortable with what that means and be okay with it. Like a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want and I don't care if I gain weight. And I was, that's fine. But then what happens? They get home and gain weight and they completely freak out and then want to try to diet back off right away. It's like, well, hold on. You said you were going to be okay with that, right? It's easy to say you're going to be okay with it and then just hope it doesn't happen versus when it actually does happen. So, but I mean, if you're trying to be as diligent as possible, I would still just do the 1,800. You're probably going to be more active anyways, and I wouldn't worry about the calorie difference. My personal opinion. No right or wrong answers. Sorry about that. Where did I go? All right. Yeah, activity trackers are super inaccurate. Yeah, so that activity trackers are a good tool just to see your normal activity levels. You just don't want to use it to get like calorie burn because it's just very unlikely to be right and it can really mess things up. But you can see, like if you're looking at steps or you're looking at kind of like overall physical activity, you can see, okay, I'm being less active than usual today. Maybe I'm going to go for a walk or something, or I've gotten plenty of activity in or whatever. You know what I mean? So that way you can look back week to week to week and see, okay, I'm being more or less active. That's great. That's a good tool. Using it to try to figure out how many calories you burned and then figure that out into your diet, that's a disaster waiting to happen. Very welcome. I've been eating a little more since I've been running for at least 6 to 7 miles and walking 10,000 steps a day, but the net calories have been bothering me. So let me go back up. So you said you're reverse dieting, right? Hold on. Well, maybe not. So yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. Like, if you're just kind of roughly trying to maintain weight and you're being more active, then yeah, you'll want to eat some more food, just because you're going to burn more calories, and that's going to keep you in rough maintenance. I think somehow, for some reason, I think I thought you were talking about reverse dieting, which you may or may not be. But yeah, I mean, it always requires context. Like, are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to get to reverse diet? Are you trying to roughly maintain? You know, if someone's just trying to roughly maintain and live an active, healthy lifestyle that they enjoy, like if you like running and taking a lot of steps, and that's just kind of how you want to kind of roughly maintain and live your life and enjoy it, then great. Then yeah, eat more calories. If you're trying to put yourself in a position to be able to more effectively cut down the road, doing all that cardio during a reverse is going to make it more challenging to cut down the road, because now that's your baseline that your body's adapted to, and you really won't be able to increase activity much and get much benefit from it, because your body does adapt to it pretty quickly, especially cardio. You get less and less calorie burn from the same amount of cardio the longer you do it. You just have to keep doing more and more and more and more. But if it's just something that you enjoy and get the health benefits from cardio, then great. Ooh, I'm falling behind here. Sorry, my nose is going bonkers here. Yeah, perfect. Yo-yo dieting around 5 years, and I'm on week 11 of my reverse. I gained 10 pounds, but I still feel hungry all the time. Yeah, with your history, man, like that's not terribly surprising. And it's not just about body fat in terms of getting your hormones back to a better place. It's one of those things where, like, okay, like we need to determine what truly is most important to us. And for you, if you really want to try to minimize that weight gain now as much as possible, you're probably gonna have to dial it back a little bit, because you're gaining pretty quickly, and just have to accept that, hey, you're going to be hungry for a while, and it's probably going to take quite a while. Like, I can't give you a time frame, but you're well below your set point, and your body fat. I mean, just looking at your picture, I mean, you look pretty shredded. So I'm assuming you're pretty low body fat, probably below what the body wants, and it's going to try to get you to gain that weight back. It wants you to gain some fat, and it wants to fill up that leptin, which is part of it. Your ghrelin's still low, and yeah, I mean, you can take some strategies like making sure you're eating plenty of protein, plenty of fiber, drinking lots of water, things like that. But at the end of the day, hunger is going to be an issue for a while, and sometimes just accepting that, just being like, okay, like I'm going to be hungry, I need to deal with it. That can help with the hunger itself, just because now you're not so focused on it, not chasing it. Whereas it's like, oh, I just need to get this hunger to go away, and you just keep trying to chase it and try to eat to make it go away. It just makes you focus on it even more. It almost makes it worse. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm saying this is just something to consider. And if you're okay with gaining more and keeping on with the increase, then that's totally fine. But then you have to accept what that means too, right? But yeah, hunger in a reverse, especially coming from a super lean position with a long history of dieting like that, very, very normal. So don't feel like there's something wrong with you. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough, man. Like, I feel for you, and I know what it's like. That's all I got. I wish you the best. I hope it goes better for you. Just curious how you made the decision to go all in as a coach and coach full-time. Had to have a huge emotional decision. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just, I shouldn't say just, but it was mostly about not wanting to get to the end of my life and feel like I had to live with the regret of not trying to do what I wanted to do with my life. And that was across the board. I mean, we went through a huge shift on everything, me and my whole family, 6, 7 longer than that from the decision, to flip everything, to leave all of our friends and family in Minnesota and move to Florida, where we love it. And for me to quit my job of 15 years and start my own business, to become a coach and all this stuff. Like, it was very hard, but I couldn't deal with the thought of wondering what could have been had I just gone after it. Right. And obviously at this point now I'm so thrilled that I did it, and it worked out very well. But I always thought, like, what would I regret more? Would I regret I talk about a regret a lot. You heard me talk about it earlier, and it is a huge driving force for me. And I think a lot of people would benefit from focusing more on regret too. If you always think about like, what am I going to regret more? And then be honest with yourself, it can keep you on path to what you truly want out of life. But I thought about what would I regret more? Trying to go after all this stuff, trying to become a coach and completely failing and falling on my face and having to go horrible, and having to get a supervisor job or whatever again, and hating Florida and having to move back to Minnesota or whatever. Or would I regret living my life in a way that I didn't want to live it and then getting to the end of the life and wondering what could have been? And that to me would have been a way bigger regret than failing. Yeah, I mean, it was challenging, and we went through a lot. It's been a long grind. One thing that I am proud of myself that I think I do well is I don't necessarily outwork everybody, but I outlast everybody. I'll do something as long as it takes to get wherever I need to be. And so even though I barely made it about freaking dollar for 3 years, I stuck with it, and thankfully it's now coming together. But I guess I'm going way above and beyond what you're actually asking me here. But fear of regret, it drives everything for me, cliche or not. Like, it really does. Thank you. Is there a max calorie deficit you would recommend if I'm still losing at 1550? I'm 5'6.5", 152 pounds, 18% body fat. What is the lowest daily calorie I should go for, and how long if I still lose? So I don't necessarily have a minimum calorie threshold, so to speak. I do look at fat. All right. So we want to make sure, like, I usually don't want to go below about 40 grams of fat for men. Maybe 30 to 40 for a shorter period of time, but fat is really important for hormones and digestion, nutrient uptake, and things like that. And it's essential. So you don't want to go too low fat. Carbs, you can go much lower. It's not an essential nutrient. I'm not saying it's not beneficial. Carbs are fantastic. But it's more likely you're going to have to go super low carb when you get really low calorie than anything else. Not that carbs and fat are better or worse for losing fat. They're not. But so as long as you're losing less than 1% of your weight on average per week, as long as you're feeling okay, like you can properly recover okay, like you're not like overly tired, overly food focused, like completely exhausted, super irritable all the time. I think I already said cold all the time. As long as you aren't just like completely feeling run into the ground all the time, like all these warning signs that your body's just fighting you too much, then at that point, as long as you can realistically stick to plan, you can kind of keep dropping. But there's a certain point where it just becomes too much. And like I don't necessarily have an exact number. I mean, a lot of people will say you don't want to go below your BMR. I don't necessarily agree with that. Plus, we probably don't even know what our BMRs are. Again, we're just looking at calculators at that point. You don't want to spend a long time under there, but as long as you're seeing results and feeling okay and not having the negative side effects, then I don't see any reason why you can't do it. Just make sure you're taking diet breaks and stuff too to keep yourself in a better place. But then if at a certain point you just can't respond anymore and you can't realistically drop, then you reverse and come back later. Thank you. You can always cut for a few weeks, but you can't always have the same event experience. I think of it like no one talks about the 4 weeks of cutting with the friends, but you would talk about memories. Exactly. You do have to be careful about like making up for the weight gain after a vacation or whatever, especially if you're coming from a position over your metabolism's already in a bad place. That's where the big mistake lies. Like the problem is what a lot of people do is they, everyone wants to look the best for their vacations. Like, I'm going on a trip, I need to look my best. So they diet aggressively into it to try to lose weight to look good for their vacation, especially like a beach vacation or whatever. So what happens? You go on extreme diets. You completely tank your metabolism. Your hormones are all jacked up. Now you go on your vacation, metabolism running super slow, super hungry. You can't feel full when you do eat. And now you're going on vacation where you're going to do anything and everything that you want. You're going to binge your face off with all the good foods and high calorie sugary drinks and stuff that we all like to have on vacation. And you gain weight rapidly. Now you come back from your trip and you're like, holy crap, I've gained all this weight. I need to get it back off again. But you try to go back into a diet and your body's already like, no, fuck you. I'm done. I am not going to be able to lose. Like, it's just not going to happen. And then they kind of get caught in this like yo-yo teeter-totter just disaster of a situation, which is why I like to encourage people to try to reverse diet into a vacation so that you can go into it with your metabolism nice and high and your hormones good, so you don't overdo it as more than necessary, and just enjoy it. And then if you want to cut when you come back, then great. Like again, we have to determine what's right for ourselves and best for ourselves, but you just got to be really cautious about feeling like, well, I'm just going to diet every time I gain weight, because that's what keeps people stuck. Like, they're always dieting for some event. Like, there's a vacation, there's a wedding, there's an anniversary, there's a reunion, you're going to see a friend for the first time in a long time. Like, there's all year long, there's always something to diet for. And we diet for it, and then afterwards we say screw it, like, who cares now? And then it's like up and down, up and down, up and down, and you just like diet your metabolism into the ground doing that. So it's something you got to be super cautious with, and you're way better off just not carrying what you look like for any certain event, and just take it in longer phases. And you're going to be leaner for a while, and you're not going to be leaner for a while, and that's okay. Nobody else cares. Nobody in the entire universe cares what you look like other than you, myself included. And that's kind of a nice, powerful thing to realize. Like, that was a big breakthrough moment for me. It was like, I literally was like telling myself, like, get over yourself. Like, who the hell do you think you are, that everyone's got their eyes on you and is judging you for what you look like? And even if they are judging me for what I look like, then that's not the type of person I want in my life anyway. You know what I mean? So, it doesn't mean there's no value in trying to look your best, but you don't want to make it your everything. Side rant. I'm good at those. Ooh, I'm going to turn my AC down. I'm dying here. 1 second. Okay. Picked up my calories, was at a very low deficit. Yeah. So, I mean, you do that one thing you need to remember, and I don't know if this is you or not, it might not be, but a lot of people will try to do that. They want to get their calories up, but they don't want to gain weight. So they increase their cardio to offset the increase in calories. But when you do that, you're not doing anything for your metabolism. You're netting the same, and it's not really getting you anywhere. How long do you usually lift, including warm-ups, not counting cardio sessions? Probably around an hour and a half or so. It can vary, but I like my rest periods. So I like to take a good amount of time between sets to make sure I'm my strongest and feeling good and recovered for each one. I don't mind the extra time in the gym. So for me, it's around that, but that doesn't make it right. You always have to understand, like, when it comes to your routine, your training volume is what matters the most. And if you take less rest between sets, then you're not going to be as strong for each subsequent set and therefore get less training volume. But if you don't want to spend as much time in the gym, then you can do things like take shorter rest periods, do some supersetting, things like that to cut down on time in the gym. But then you also cut down on your volume. So it just depends on what's most important to you. You notice I say that all the time, right? Like, it always depends on what's most important to you. We need context. We need to create our own unique balances. And there isn't like a one size fits all approach for everybody. Oh, I think I recognize him now that you say that. That's funny. Sorry about that. Well, either way. Will adding weightlifting mean I can cut down some of my walking, since I love running and I feel like walking is extra? Well, I would recommend weightlifting regardless, no matter what. Does weightlifting burn calories? Yes, as does adding muscle, but I don't like to look at weightlifting as a calorie burning measure. It's more of a building and maintaining lean body mass, getting the benefits for longevity and things like that, just overall strength and well-being. And then we alter our cardio and calories for either being in a calorie deficit or a surplus, and you just kind of keep strength training roughly the same, whatever phase you're in. But if you're not strength training, I definitely recommend it for sure. And you will get some extra calorie burn from it. And if you want, and I would definitely recommend more strength training to more walking. So if that helps you cut down on the walking, then I think that's a fantastic idea, personally. Very welcome, Diego. All right. Ooh, we got a super chat coming in here. Thank you so much for the super chat, Kyra. I really appreciate it. I do. YouTube pays us, but it's not a lot. It's like pennies. I think I get like $3 for doing these live streams or something. So I do appreciate getting a little extra love, paying for some of this equipment that I bought to do these. And I'm not asking for it, but just know that it's very much appreciated. So thank you. What do you have to say? I lost 8 pounds after 20 weeks, 14 diet weeks, and I've lost 1.5 inches off my waist. That's fantastic. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm halfway there. Oh, that's awesome. So very proud of you. I'm so happy I've been able to help, and thank you for the $10. I really do appreciate it. And, keep going. And just, as always, just let me know if you need anything or have any questions. And I think you might have had some other stuff up here. Let me see. Thank you. It really does mean a lot to me. It really does. It's awesome. I'm not going to stop smiling from reading all this, Kyra. This is so fantastic. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy. Like, the fact that you've lost weight in inches is great, but this stuff to me, I keep using my pointer as if you can actually see that. this stuff, like your relationship with your food and your move and your mood and less stress and not feeling guilty and beating yourself up and mentally just making these, that's everything. Like, that is so much more valuable than any weight loss. But the fact that you can do both together, that's fantastic. Because I think a lot of people feel like, well, it's either just be absolutely miserable and get results, or be fat and happy. You know what I mean? And there's definitely a middle ground for sure. And it's not this all or nothing mentality or approach. And my video coming out next week is about how there really are no bad foods, and I'll probably get hate for that, but I don't care. I don't think that there really isn't. And I won't go into detail now because I'll go into detail on that. But yeah, I mean, food is a huge part of our lives, right? And it's not just like fuel. It's not just for losing weight and staying in shape and things like that. It's everything. It's anniversaries, and it's get-togethers, and it's birthdays, and it's celebrations, and having a good time. We all have to find our own balance, and I'm glad that you're finding yours. That's it. Forgiving yourself and just getting back on track is huge. Whereas if you beat yourself up and it just kind of snowballs from there, then it's just a disaster, where there's nothing you can do in the short term that will screw everything up. Nothing. There's not one thing you can do in a short period of time that will screw everything up. What does screw everything up is allowing a mistake or failure or whatever you want to call it in the short term turn into something that lasts for the long term because of it. So you cannot screw this up. That's awesome. Very happy for you. And thank you again for the $10. I heard some people say you shouldn't count the water you drink during exercise towards the overall water intake for the day. I disagree. I also disagree. Why would you not? I hear some shit sometimes, but that just makes no sense. I mean, I'm guessing what they're theorizing, is that a word? Hypothesizing. What they're probably trying to get at is that when you exercise, you sweat and therefore excrete more water and sodium, so you need more water. Which, yes, that's true, but why would you not count it, right? Like, you still count it. You do want to make sure you're hydrated for your workouts. I do recommend good, like 16 ounces of water during, before, and during your exercise to stay hydrated. But why would you not count it? Like, I mean, I guess you could have a non-activity day and activity day water intake level, but I don't really even track water intake personally. I usually don't, unless it's an issue for somebody and they find benefit of doing it. It's just make sure you're well hydrated, make sure your pee is mostly clear, and that you're drinking when you're thirsty and staying hydrated. Not to say that water isn't important. It is. But anyway, can it happen, or does it make sense if the metabolism adapts, but when at 1,300 calories, if you feel cold, it's there, then you bump up to 14 and start to feel okay, but then begin to feel cold again at 1,400? Possibly. You know, that's still pretty low calorie too, and especially if you're super lean and everything. I think it might just be a momentary, like, thank you for the extra calories kind of a thing. And there could be a lot of factors too. Like there really could be a lot in terms of like, you know, how much you were working out, you know, how well you recovered, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have a great, like, this is exactly what it is kind of an answer, because I don't necessarily know for sure. And there's certainly no, at least to my knowledge, no data on this that we can refer to. But it's not abnormal to go through. This would have been a better way to talk about this, and is it's normal to go through bouts of feeling better and worse through a reverse diet. That's very normal, for whatever that's worth. No such thing as a dumb question. When lifting, I know you can gain weight, but would your clothes get tighter at first? Well, if your clothes are getting tighter, like in the legs and in the sleeves and stuff like that, then sure. If you're building muscle, it's taking up more size. So you could notice that. If you're noticing around your waist, then that's more body fat related. But yeah, I mean, especially too, like your hips, like if you're like women usually like to build glutes more than men do. So if you're building bigger glutes, that's going to take up more space in your jeans. You know what I mean? So that's going to fill up extra space. It doesn't necessarily happen super fast, but you can certainly have your clothes get tighter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gaining body fat. You know, you might be, of course, but we always have to look at it objectively too. I've had not even just singularly. I've had a few clients at least who have checked in with me going through a reverse and said, I can't take this. I'm getting so fat. I feel so fluffy. My clothes are fitting tight. You know, this is really, you know, I'm having a really hard time with this. And then we look at their stuff and all their measurements are less than they were before. They're visibly leaner in their pictures. And it's like, I think there's just something mentally about, we associate increasing calories with getting fat. So even if it's not actually happening, we feel like it's happening, even though there's nothing there. Like, are you sure that you're feeling super fluffy and you're really filling out your clothes big time? Or is it just you kind of feel like that's happening because of an increase in calories? The mind is a crazy thing. And when I say this, like, there's been some times where it's like they are significant. Their weight might be the same, but significantly leaner as the process goes well and they build muscle. So that's why it's so important to take those pictures and measurements and not just go by gut feeling and stuff like that, because your gut feeling is not usually very good and reliable. Agreed, Tracy. Hey, Marianne. Thank you. You too. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know for sure, but you're welcome. Freddie, yeah, I mean, it depends on how frequently you're eating, I guess. 1 second. So I do recommend a good protein source with each meal, assuming you're not eating like 12 meals a day or something like that. So I have an old video that is titled something around, let's look for it if you want to find it. What is it called? Let's just look up build muscle and hopefully it'll be there. There it is. How often, let me get rid of you. So yeah, just look me up. How often to eat to build muscle. And I guess we don't need that. And it kind of goes into some of the science behind how, you can only utilize so much protein in a single serving to use for anabolism or building muscle. So I mean, it depends on the leucine content of that source, but usually around 30 to 40 grams, maybe 45, is kind of the most you can use in one sitting to increase protein synthesis towards anabolism in that meal. So while the most important thing is arguably your total protein for the day, there is a difference, in my opinion, between having like four 40 grams of protein split evenly throughout the day versus like 280 grams or 160 gram, you know what I mean? Because you can only utilize so much protein at one time. So if muscle is like your number one priority and you want to do everything you can to build as much muscle as possible, then I recommend eating between 3 and 5 meals, spacing out your meals with a good protein source evenly throughout the day. So maybe every 3 to 5 hours. Usually I find that a good, more reasonable spot for a lot of people is 4 meals, space it out around 4 or 5 hours apart if possible. And that's probably going to get you the most. There was a study that was done where they infused amino acids into humans and watched their rate of muscle protein synthesis while they were doing this. And what they found was, when they started infusing the amino acids, their muscle protein synthesis spiked up significantly in the beginning. Actually, I'm going to go back to that video. Hold on. I'm sure it's in there. Should save that. Sorry. One second. Here it is. Okay. So if you look at this graph, you can see here that, okay, this is your protein synthesis baseline. And they started infusing amino acids. And at first, it actually saw a little bit of a dip. And then it increased significantly within 30 to 60 minutes and came up to here. By 60 to 120 minutes, it went up to a little bit higher levels. And then it kind of plateaued there. And then after 120 minutes, it came back down to almost the baseline rate of protein synthesis until 360 minutes, so 6 hours. So what that possibly tells us, let me get myself back up here. What that possibly tells us is there's like a refractory period in how your body can like assimilate or utilize protein for protein synthesis to build muscle. So like a lot of people used to always say, well, eat every 2 hours because you can only use so much protein in a sitting. So you want to just constantly protein. But if you're not going to be able to keep your protein synthesis high for a longer period of time, if you're constantly feeding protein over and over and over again, you might not be getting anything from that protein that you continuously keep eating, right? So to me, it's better to space it out more, 4 or 5 hours apart or so, with a bigger serving around maybe 40 grams or so. It depends on the size of the person and the source of leucine. I think I actually saw that. It was a chart that Lane Norton had done. There it is. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger if I can. So yeah, amount of protein source to reach 3.2 to 4.4 grams of leucine, which is kind of like what they hypothesize is the highest amount of leucine you can use in a protein serving for anabolism. So you can see that for beef, you need about 40 grams of protein. For chicken, 43. For pork, 40. For eggs, 37. For fish, 40. For whey protein, 27. Which I kind of want to. Oh, I can't highlight it. It's a video. But let me just go back to myself. A lot of people will say, well, I don't want to use whey protein because it's not real food and it's not as good. And I'm like, if anything, you could argue that whey protein is the best source of protein because it has the highest leucine content of any amino acid responsible for muscle protein synthesis. So there's nothing wrong with this. If it helps you get your protein up, by all means, eat protein until your heart's content. I when I'm specifically trying to do everything I usually have at least 1, if not 2 servings a day. So anyways, that was my very long-winded answer to if you should eat protein every meal. For the most part, yes. But if you're eating tons of meals, then it's probably not necessary. You're very welcome. Happened last year and I freaked out and quit. It was multiple factors, and I want to start again because I have more energy. I'm just scared to start again. Yeah, I mean, I understand being cautious, but you just gotta just know that it's not something you'll regret. And just the biggest thing that I think kind of holds people back and stops them in their tracks and makes them struggle is it's it's the way we judge ourselves. It's literally fear of our own judgment. Like, can you imagine, like, if you just didn't judge yourself about anything, like how much more you'd be willing to do, and how much less you'd be scared to fail on stuff. Like, you're not scared to usually not scared to fail because you're worried what other people will say. You're afraid of the way you're going to treat yourself if you fail. But what if you're just like, well, sometimes you fail, you just learn from it and you just grow and improve because of it. Like, you literally can't improve and grow without failure. It's an integral part of the process. So if we try to avoid it at all times, we're never going to get where we want to be, because you're going to fail. That's how you improve. Like, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or that you're a failure. Yeah, just like stopping the judgment of ourselves is like freaking key to overall happiness and getting where you want to be. This is something that took me 42 years to realize. Used to track sodium, but I intake around 4,000 milligrams on weekends. I do want to keep it at a reasonable amount for health's sake. So what's your take on sodium? Sodium is not a problem unless you have a specific, and this is not medical advice. None of my content is, but from how I understand it, sodium does not matter unless you have a specific medical condition like hypertension or something like that, where you do need to keep sodium down. And there is a small percentage of the population, it's around like 5 to 10% of people, who their kidneys don't properly excrete sodium. So if you have a lot of sodium and your kidneys can't excrete them very well, that's going to possibly cause some issues, right? And you'll probably know if that's you. Every time you eat sodium, you blow up like a fish. But sodium is an electrolyte. It's very beneficial for performance. So I think a bigger problem people have is not eating too much sodium, but not eating enough sodium, because they think it's bad and they should stay away from it. And that's just not true. And also realize that your body adjusts to the amount of sodium that you eat. So if you always eat 4,000 milligrams of sodium, your body gets used to that and it just adjusts to it with how it excretes. If it's lower and then you have a larger amount, it adjusts by excreting it out through urine the next day. You know what I mean? So it's not something that I typically keep an eye on unless there's a specific medical condition that is need to, or if you're finding that especially for people who are more into muscle and getting a pump in the gym. Like, if you notice that you can't keep a pump, if you notice, extremely low energy, even though everything else is good, then you want to take a look at sodium, and it might be pretty low. I've seen that sometimes, where somebody will be telling me that, and I'm like, oh, let's take a look at your sodium, and they're eating like 500 milligrams a day. I'm like, okay, there we go. Let's get that sodium number up. And they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. So sodium's fine. How do you deal with family that doesn't necessarily support your healthy lifestyle, and when there are less than ideal foods everywhere in the house? For me, I can't worry about what anybody else thinks about what I do or how I choose to live my life. And you can't expect anybody else to understand it, because they're not living your life. How can they know it? They have different goals and different lifestyles and different preferences, and they're not their goals, they're not their dreams, they're yours. So, like, this might come across as a little bit of tough love, but I do mean it from a place of love. And that is, you got to do what is best for you, regardless of what anybody else does or thinks. And at the end of the day, you're the only one that has any control over that. And you have to be accountable to yourself. And if they don't support it, then that's on them. Now, one thing you can do, this is an uncomfortable conversation to have, but it's a very good one to have. And if somebody really truly cares about you, they'll get on board as soon as you say this. You can say to somebody and say, I know you don't understand, but this is important to me, and I could use your support. That'll stop just about anybody in their tracks, and they'll be like, oh man, like, you're right, I'm sorry. And they'll get on board. if they're continuing to like sabotage you or whatever else, and they're not supporting you, and you won't have that conversation, then you can't place the blame on them anymore. You have to blame yourself for not being willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. We got to do uncomfortable things to get where we want to be. And if there's less than ideal things in the house and everything else, then you're going to have to hold yourself accountable. I mean, at the end of the day, that's everything. You being accountable to yourself to do what's necessary to get to where you want to be, and not letting anybody else knock you off course. And sometimes too, I had an interesting eye-opening, actually, even for myself as well as my client. This was a number of years ago, and she said that her calories were pretty low, and she, like, as much as I say, like, you can have donuts, when you get to a certain point, like, donuts aren't going to fit unless you want to be freaking starving and not get your protein in. And she's like, my husband keeps buying me donuts, bringing them in the house, and he keeps trying to get me to eat them. He's trying to sabotage my efforts, and I don't understand why he won't support me. I don't understand why he wants me to not lose the weight and this and that and the other. And she was so mad at him. And I said what I just said earlier. I said, have this conversation, tell them that, hey, this is important to me. I could really use your support. This, like, I appreciate that you're giving me these donuts, but they're making it hard for me, and I could use your help right now. And you know what he said to her? He said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was just trying to help. I was trying to show you that I don't care how much you weigh. I still love you no matter what. And I don't care if you lose weight or not. I love you as you are. Like, oh my God, like, right? Like, melt your heart kind of stuff. It was just a miscommunication. And that's like, this is going down a whole other rabbit hole of problems in relationships. It's just lack of good communication. No therapist over here. But once you have that, and that's why I say, like, from a client coach perspective, open, honest communication is so important, because if you don't have it, then it's just like, it makes it so difficult. So when you have that conversation, and it turned out he was very supportive, he was just doing it in a way that was not a good way for her. And then he got on board, and everything was good. So there, hopefully that was helpful. Is it normal for your weight to be going when reverse dieting, even if you slowly increase your calories? I'm assuming you're saying up. How do you know if it's muscle or fat? Plus, what are good indicators that it's working? Well, working, there's really no context to that. So I can't really, I don't really know how to answer that portion of it. And you're probably not really going to know how much is muscle and how much is fat. If your measurements are staying the same, but weight's going up, if visibly you look the same, your clothes are fitting the same, and weight's going up, then you can realistically say, okay, look, there's a good chunk of this is muscle, but fat can go on a lot faster than muscle can. Fat is accumulated by the ounce, muscle is accumulated by the gram. But yeah, I mean, that's why you want to look at not just weight, and look at everything, and look at pictures and measurements and everything else. And if it's coming up too fast, then you just need to, if that's a priority for you, is to minimize weight gain as much as possible, then you have to take it, maybe give it a little time, maybe increase every other week. You know what I mean? If you're struggling, and you give your body some time to adapt. I guess hopefully that helps. Hey, is reverse dieting essential, or can I just hop into eating at a calorie deficit? Is reverse dieting essential, or can I just hop into a calorie? Oh, so the reverse diet is if your metabolism is suppressed from dieting. So if your metabolism isn't suppressed from dieting, then there would be no reason to go into a reverse diet before going into a calorie deficit, because you're already in a good place to do so. If you're coming from a long history of yo-yo dieting, extreme calorie restriction, and it feels like your maintenance calories are very low, then you're going to want to reverse diet first to get back into a better place so that you can more efficiently cut down the road. But like one time I had a question about, somebody said, I've never dieted in my entire life. Do I need to reverse diet first? Or can I cut kind of similar to this. And it was like, if you've never dieted before, then there's no reason to reverse because your metabolism's fine, right? Like you haven't put your body through that grind that a calorie deficit is on the body. So it kind of depends on your starting position and what your history looks like. But if you feel like metabolically you're in a good place, then you can go jump right into it. 5 feet tall, weighing 125 pounds, waist 26 and a half inches. My goal is to see a tiny bit of abs. How many more inches do you think I will need before seeing a hint of abs? It's literally impossible for me to say. And like everyone just holds body fat so differently. Like for women, it's much harder to see abs just because you hold more body fat than men. Yeah. And even then, even with men, like some people can see abs at 12-13%. Some people need to get 10%. Some people don't even see abs until they get down to like just completely shredded like 6% body fat, because our bodies hold body fat so differently. Everyone's very unique and holds body fat more or less in certain areas, and certain areas are more or less stubborn. So the more stubborn areas are just the ones that tend to come off last, because to lose fat, you go into a calorie deficit, your body just loses it wherever it wants to. You can't spot burn it, and you just have to kind of keep going, just like it's just that easy, right? But I can't say, like, I don't even want to like give even a rough, like wild guess, just because all that can possibly do is create some sort of expectation. And if you've been watching my live streams, I talk about almost every one of them, how expectations are pretty much your worst enemy, because it just sets you up to be disappointed when you might not even necessarily be disappointed. And most of the time our expectations are unrealistic to begin with. And then when it doesn't happen, we feel like we're failing and we feel like something's wrong when there isn't necessarily something wrong. So yeah, I can't say, sorry. All right. I have some questions that were asked ahead of time because I'm caught up for right now. So let me get to those. Where did they go? I gotta open them. Crap, did I lose it? There it is. All right, let's see. This isn't it. Shoot. 1 second, bear with me. Boy, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I can find them. I had them all laid out. Where did I go? Sorry for the technical difficulties over here. Unfortunately I had questions from like a lot of different areas, so I had them all put on like a Word document so that I could easily find them. But I'll get to them. We'll just have to do this in a more roundabout kind of a way. Let me see. Okay. Is it okay to have consecutive refeed days on the weekend and then a refeed day in the middle of the week? I lost 55 pounds and my body fat is 12 to 13%. And sometimes I feel like I need another refeed day in the middle of the week during my calorie deficit. Sometimes I'll have junk food on Wednesday, and that seems to do the trick. Wondering if a refeed day would be better for fat loss. Thanks for all your help. Very welcome, Big Al. So I'm thinking about Al Bundy. I used to love that show. Anyway, so you could do one in the middle of the week. If the main benefit of that one would be that it helps with replenishing glycogen storage, so you have a little bit more energy for your next workout. The kind of the mental benefit, as you touched on, to be able to enjoy a bit more food for that day. It won't. I don't think it would have a benefit for fat loss, just because now you're spending one more day on higher calories, and the fact that it's in the middle of the week doesn't give you that benefit of the hormones and metabolism that can come from consecutive days. So it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna hurt, but it's not really going to help. And it does take you out of a deficit for that day. Not that that's a huge deal, but if you're looking for what would be more optimal, if you would like a third refeed day, as I would do 3 consecutive days of refeeds instead of 2 and then 1 in the middle, because then you have more of a likelihood of getting a benefit for your hormones and metabolism from that additional high day versus one in the middle of the week. But that doesn't mean just because that would be more optimal that that's what you should do. If you like it and it makes it easier to sustain and feel good and like the process to have another day in the middle of the week, then that's absolutely fine. And one thing you can do too, if you wanted, take the calories that you would add in addition to that one day, and then take away that subtracted from the other 4 days or 3 days, 4 days to create the same calorie deficit for the week, but have an additional refeed day, if that makes sense, right? So like if you were going to increase your calories by 300 for that day, you could take away whatever 300 divided by 4 is. What is that, like 60 or something? 60, 70, a little less than 70, 60 some calories. And take that away from those. So now your average for the week is the same. You're not seeing that much less of you're not eating that much less on those low days, but now you get that extra high day. And as long as your calories are equated for the end of the week, that's what matters the most by far, regardless of how you split it up. We can take some strategies like the double refeeds and stuff that we don't know for sure, but may have some hormonal and metabolic benefits, as well as retaining lean body mass, according to that USF study. But no matter what, however you get to the same average calories and macros by the end of the week, that's what matters the most by far. So if there's a way that is easier for you to sustain, then that's great. Can you talk about what your clients say is the most difficult thing about cutting after a long reverse? That's a really good question. I would have to say probably that you get used to eating the higher calories. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you have a long history of dieting, you've been feeling like you've been starving yourself forever. And now you finally are in a good place with your hormones and your metabolism. You finally have your calories nice and high. You finally learn to be more balanced and more flexible, to be able to go out and eat easier and enjoy more food and be able to enjoy all that stuff. And now all of a sudden you got to take them away again, right? That can be like, oh crap, like I don't want to take away my calories. And that's a very normal and valid concern that people have, is like, well, if I reverse diet, I'm going to get used to these higher calories. I'm not going to want to cut them again. And while that may be true, what's the alternative? Just keep your calories down forever because you don't want to have to go through that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Like, you have to think about what's better and what's worse. And to me, constantly eating low calories because you don't want to get used to higher calories is kind of silly almost. I'm not calling anybody who thinks like that silly. I'm just, if you think about it objectively, it just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest struggle, is like, okay, like, and one of the things that let me go back to myself here. One of the things that I like to preach a lot is that you really need to focus on what is the focus of whatever phase you're in during the process, and enjoy the positives that come with that. So many people get caught in the grass is always greener mentality. What I mean by that is, like, it's not uncommon at all for somebody who wants to lose weight, right? But their metabolism is trash. They need to reverse diet. They're going to have to go through it for several months. And what they do, and I try as much as possible to keep them in the right frame of mind, but the whole time it's, I hate this, I want to lose weight, I hate it, I feel fat, this sucks, I just want to see results, and they don't even really enjoy the fact that they get to eat more calories, that they get to have more balance and flexibility, that they feel better, perform better, recover better, sleep better, like, just all the benefits that come with the reverse. They barely even enjoy them because they're so focused on wanting to lose weight. And then I've literally seen this before, where somebody will complain about that for the entire reverse diet, and then within 1 week of cutting, now they're complaining that they're hungry, they want more food, they have less energy, like all the things that they should have been enjoying before, now that's what they want within a week or two of going into the cut, the thing that they said that they want the whole time. Like, you can't have it all. Like, I wish we could, but you can't. Like, you it's just very unlikely anyways that you're just always going to feel fantastic and be able to have lots of balance and flexibility and be able to eat lots of food and lose weight and feel great all the time and get shredded. Like, it just, we take it in phases, right? So if you focus on the positives of whatever phase you're in, you're going to enjoy the process so much more. And you always have to remember that no matter what you're doing, it's temporary. The time for the other phase will come. So it's like, man, when you're in a reverse, enjoy that for all the benefits to come. And then when it's time to cut, Now you need to switch that flip mentally and go, okay, the time for more food will come. Remind yourself that this is temporary and I will not be doing this forever, because that does trap a lot of people. They have a hard time sticking to the plan because they feel like they're missing out all the time and this and that and the other. And it just makes the process that much more difficult. You have to go that much longer. You have to get that much more aggressive. And it just makes it a really difficult process where it's like you want to just kind of get in and get out as fast as possible and not let it delay. And if you focus then on, okay, now I'm going to lose weight. Now I'm going to get in better shape. I'm going to focus on the body composition improvements and all the stuff that are coming with that. Understanding that the time for the other stuff is coming again, that's going to help a lot. So that switch in the mindset is probably the best way to handle the difficult thing of going from a reverse to a cut, knowing that, okay, like it's just by nature, you're just not going to be able to be as flexible with things. And it doesn't mean you can't include some things you enjoy, but there's always that trade-off, because the more like sugary snacks and low filling foods that you eat, the more likely you are to be hungry. And a lot of times they cause you to just crave even more. So like you can have them, but you just have to understand the pros and cons that come with it. And yeah, so let me see if there's any more questions. There was one more that I'm gonna have to try to find. Thank you. You too. Yeah, very sad. I didn't really follow him much, so I didn't know him much, but I know a lot of people who knew him very well, and they all had just amazing things to say about him. It's sad. Thanks, you too. All right, I got one more in here. If you want to hang around and see what it is. I got to find it though, so bear with me. On Facebook. If you're not following me on Facebook, Colin DeWaay Training. Let me see. I guess I can bring my screen up. That's me now. Here we go. All right. How do I know when to do maintenance? I'm liking how I feel and look. Right now, and don't want to be scrawny. So, like if you're happy with how you look and how you feel, well, then maybe now's the time to do maintenance. I happen to know this situation better. Elise is one of my clients, so I know what she's been going through, and she is one of the hardest workers you'll ever find in your life. Like, gets great results, and everyone gets jealous of her results, but not many people want to not want to follow the plan as diligently as Elise does. But in your position, Elise, I think you might be allowing your fear of being scrawny, possibly stopping you from going further into your cut than that. Like I think you want to do, but you're just a little bit fearful of what it might look like. And to me, I'm not saying we have to keep going. If you're happy with where you're at, we just stop it and reverse back out and just kind of roughly maintain. Even that being said, sometimes there's value in, if you're like where you're at right now, maybe going just a little bit further just to bring you a little bit below where you're at now. So you leave a little bit of wiggle room to gain a little bit of weight to get back to where you are right now. As you gain a little bit of weight during the reverse, that can make some sense, unless you're completely over the process, which I don't think you are. But correct me if I'm wrong. So that could be a strategy. But to me, you had an initial goal in mind, and I don't think we're even near that right now. What I would think would make more sense and this is just your specific case. So if anybody's watching this, I'm not saying that in general to this question. I'm speaking specifically to Elise right now. And I think you should keep going and continue to lean out. And if you get to a point and you don't like it, you're like, I don't like this, I look too scrawny, I hate how I look, then we just taken a more aggressive reverse back out and intentionally gain some weight back, right? Like, it's not permanent. It's not permanent for you to lose weight and be that scrawny look that you want to avoid. If you feel like you do look too scrawny, then we have some fun increasing calories faster and put the weight back on a little bit faster than they would in a normal reverse. Not just throw it back on super fast, but you'll come back out and get back to where you are right now. right? So it's not going to hurt as long as you're not over the process. And like if you just don't want to cut anymore, then we should stop. Like anytime you're mentally over a cut, then it's just time to stop and reverse back out, not stop and just say screw it and go crazy like so many people do. And I know you won't do that. But I don't want to, I want to, how do I want to word this? I just don't want you to stop yourself from going after something because you're afraid of what you think it might look like, not knowing what it actually will look like, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when people say, oh, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get too big, not realizing how hard it is to actually build muscle and what it really takes to do that. But even if you could, if you were like a genetic freak who could just build muscle like crazy and look like Arnold overnight somehow, even if you did get too big and too bulky and muscular, well, then just stop weightlifting and you'll lose it, right? Like it's not doing it because you're afraid of that doesn't make any sense, because if you don't like it, then you don't build muscle and it's just there forever. It's use it or lose it. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So don't be afraid of building muscle because you don't want to look too big. Chances are, like I always tell people, especially females, that if you want to get the look you're after, you should do everything you can to build as much muscle as possible and get that look that you say you don't want, because that's probably the thing that's going to get you the look that you actually want. It's just it looks different than we think. And just in general, so many people stop themselves from going after things because they're afraid of something that's unknown. And I just really encourage not to do that as much as possible in general. Aha, you are here. You got it, Elise. Very proud of you. You're such a hard worker and such a blessing to the team. You got, I'm going to hold you to that, Marcus. Yeah, I'm so happy for you, Marcus. You've been absolutely killing it, and I love that you're enjoying the extra balance and flexibility, and that you're building like crazy. And even though the weight's going up, like your waist is coming down, and man, that's fun. And there's just the fact more than anything that you're like you said, all the benefits, like just enjoying the process again, which I know was an issue for a long time. Like that's huge. Like it's not to be overlooked. Sometimes we mistake happiness with body composition, and that's not always and usually isn't the case. A lot of times I think people would actually be happier if they were okay with looking a little bit heavier than they want to, but we're okay also with having the extra balance and flexibility that comes with not putting so much pressure on being leaner all the time, you know? Is it true that you can't get into a fat burning zone when insulin is up, even when you do a lot of activity, but straight after eating? So insulin is demonized like crazy, and it shouldn't be. I mean, I understand the concern because it is technically it's a storage hormone, but it's not like an on-off switch. Like it does have a blunting effect to fat loss, but it's also you got to consider the whole day as a period, because like a lot of people will say, well, just do like less servings of insulin, and because then you're spiking it less. But as long as your numbers are equated, it doesn't really matter if you spread it out or have them in smaller windows or whatever else, because you're going to spike it more at one time and burn less. And then later in the day, you're going to burn more when you're not eating. Or if you do smaller, then you spike it less and it comes back down faster, and it nets about the same. So it really makes no difference. But there's plenty of evidence that shows that diets that are higher and even higher or lower in insulin, especially with calories and protein equated, there's no difference in fat loss. It's just so demonized. But you have to understand there's a large difference between insulin in somebody who is sedentary and eating in a calorie surplus, and just sitting around doing nothing, eating donuts all the time and just getting fat, versus someone who's active, strength training, living an active, healthy lifestyle in a calorie deficit. That's a much different thing. Now you're utilizing that for your performance and your muscles. When you eat carbs, it's converted to glucose. glucose then converts into glycogen inside the muscles. You can store around 400 to 500 grams of glycogen in the muscles and 100 grams in the liver. You deplete those glycogen storages, some of them, as you train that muscle, and then you replenish it. So it's like you're recycling that, and it's just like it's been so demonized, insulin, and it's just not supported by science that you have to have super low insulin diets to lose fat. And you're going to see some of this in my next video that's coming out this week, where we look at some people who did some extreme things to like, I'll give you a little hint. There was one guy who ate 2,000 calories worth of ice cream every single day for 100 days and lost like 32 pounds. So, and saw his health markers improve as well. So yeah, you don't have to avoid insulin. Now, obviously, if you have like type 2 diabetes and stuff, you need to monitor your insulin. That's a different story. But just in general, no, it's not like an on-off switch for fat burning. Yes, sir. All right. I think that's it. It's been 2 hours, so I'm going to call it. I am gone. Let me see. What is it? The 13th. So I'm gone in 2 weeks. So it may be 3 weeks, although there seems to be a good demand. I will consider one next week. I'm not promising. We'll see what the week looks like. And maybe I'll do one next week, and then we'd be back on our 2 week schedule. So if not, though, then I'll for sure do one on September 3rd. And really appreciate it. Appreciate you. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you're interested in coaching, head to ColinDeWaayTraining.com, fill out an application, and I will get back to you. All right. Have a good weekend. Thank you.